Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, I'm Jonathan Martins and we've been going step by step through Azure Cloud Labs to help you turn cloud theory into real world hands-on experience. Before we get started, make sure to like this video, subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you do not miss the next Azure Labs in our series, okay? Today we're going to be working on our Lab 8. Yeah, we've come this far. And today we're going to be deploying Azure Container Registry image with Azure App Service for containers. If you are very familiar with Amazon or AWS, or let me say Amazon, Elastic Beanstalk, and ECR, this is like the Azure equivalent. All right. So as usual, we're going to walk through our architecture diagram so that we have a good understanding of what we're going to be working on today. Okay. So of course here, just take note, we have our Azure Container Registry, which we're going to create when we start the lab. And this is where our Docker image will basically live in, right? So we're going to spin up a small Ubuntu virtual machine, right? And what's going to happen is that we're going to install Docker on our virtual machine. Take note of the Docker file right here. We're going to upload the Docker file on our virtual machine, and then we're going to build our image right using this Docker file inside our virtual machine. Then what's next? After we build the image, we're then going to push this into ACR, which is our Azure Container Registry. Okay. Finally, the image that will push here or push in to the ACR, we're going to deploy that image using Azure App Service, specifically web app for containers. So what's going to happen is that Azure App Service will automatically pull the image from ACR and then it's going to run it as a fully managed container application, right? So we don't need any manual provisioning. We don't need to, set up load balancer or have to, manage, scaling groups and all that. Azure App Service is going to manage all of it for us. That's why we have the App Service environment here. So the way I want you to think about it, so think of it like, let's say you want to deploy a startup web app that's containerized. Maybe your team built a small Node.js dashboard or maybe a React front end. So instead of us like setting up the infrastructure manually, what we can do is that we can push that container to ACR, which is our Azure Container Registry, and then we're going to deploy it to App Service with just a few clicks, which we're going to show today, or which I'm going to show today, and then you can actually follow through. So Azure takes care of scaling, it takes care of like health monitoring and even patching like behind the scenes, right? Just like the Elastic Beanstalk for those of us very familiar with AWS. So this is very simple, it's very clean, and it's very ideal for small teams who want, let's say, continuous deployment without having to manage the servers. All right. So that's just like a general overview of what we'll be dealing with today or what we're going to be working on today. And yeah, we can go ahead to, start our lab or dive into the Azure portal and build this step by step. Okay, so first of all, create our resource group. Okay, so we can call this ACR App Service resource group. Okay, so now that we have our resource group, then we can go ahead to create our Azure Container Registry. So we can just search for Azure Container Registry, and this is it here. So we can create this. Okay, we can just call this habits ACR. It should be okay. Okay, we're good. So once this is done deploying, the next thing I want to do is that we want to basically build an image, and then build and push our image. We'll build it and then we're going to push our Docker image to ACR. But before we do that, the first thing we need to create a virtual machine. So we can create a virtual machine right here. Okay, the same resource group, since we're working this resource group, then we can call this 8 build VM. Okay, just to make sure our image is okay, our size is good. All right, okay, just a second, let me go to my so I had my key. All right, so we can leave this as none, and yes, that should be all. We don't really need much for this since it's just a sample, just a walkthrough. So you can have your own configuration for your virtual machine, but for now, for this lab, we just want something very simple. And yes, we can download the key. So I had a key before, so I needed to delete it, not necessarily, but I just deleted it so I can have, you can see the other ones are here, but I just wanted a new one. Okay, so deployment in progress. So when this is done, we can connect to the virtual machine. So just like what we have here, we have created our Azure Container Registry, and okay, we can take this off. No, that's not going away. But yeah, we have our container registry which you've created, and yes, we just created our virtual machine. So the next thing we want to do is that on this virtual machine, we want to install Docker on it, and then we're going to have a Dockerfile that we can have, or that we can create, on the virtual machine or in the virtual machine. So we have this, so now we can connect to Bastion. I don't know why this is not going away. Azure user, and yes, this is it. All right, so we can connect to Bastion. So it opens up, terminal for us. And yes, we have our terminal. So what we want to do is I want to install Docker. So right here, I have, the command to install Docker. So first of all, you just want to run this, step by step, and you can copy everything, but I just, prefer running everything one after the other to be sure. Okay. So you can run this, and then okay, then finally can run that again, then install our Docker CE/CLI, and then the container D, which we'll need to build our image. Okay, we're good. Let me show that this last one is done. Yeah, all right. Okay. It's going to take a few seconds to be done soon. then we can now verify that Docker was successfully or is successfully installed. Okay, so I can clear this, then I can check Docker version. Perfect. So I can also check by doing the sudo system control ctl status of Docker. Perfect. So we have our Docker installed and our Docker is running. So we can now add user to the Docker group. So we can do that by having or by writing the sudo add Docker user. Okay. Perfect. So now that we've successfully installed Docker and we've added the user or added a user to the Docker group, so the next thing that we want to do is that we want to go to our ACR, which is our container registry, and then get the keys to be able to log in. So we can go to our container registries here. We can have that. So we can go to our access keys, and then we're going to see the login server right here. So for us to log in, you can get your admin details. You see the username and password. And if you go to our lab here, readme, you can see the format to log in Docker. We have our, client, the login server, and then we have, the username and password. So we can show this. So what I can do is that I can just copy this, and then I can replace my password with this, which is the secret password. I can replace that. Then the username is lab8acr. Then our login server is lab8acr.azurecr.io. So we can confirm that it tallies, so we can successfully log in. Okay, and then our password. Okay, so login succeeded, right? So the next thing we want to do is that we want to be able to upload like the Dockerfile, right? Which we have here. We want to upload the Dockerfile to the virtual machine, but first of all, we have to create a directory. So I can create a directory. I can just call this lab8 app. Okay, then I can cd into lab8 app, and then okay, yeah, this is good. So it's empty, right? So now that it's empty, then we want to have our Dockerfile. Where is it? Okay, we want to have our Dockerfile. This is it. It's a very simple Dockerfile. So what it does is that it uses nodes to run, and then it creates a simple HTML which just says Azure Container Registry. But it depends on what the app does. But this one is just very simple for this lab. So we can copy this, our Dockerfile, and add it. So this is our basic application. So if we check our application, or if we check our directory or folder, we have the Dockerfile right here. So now that we have this, what we want to do is that we want to be able to build this image using the Dockerfile. We're going to tag it, and then we're going to push the image to ACR. So I can clear this. Then I'll try and create my variables. So I have my ACR login server. So I can copy my server from here. Yes. And let's create image name. Image name, I can call this lab8 node application. Then of course we have to create a tag, so I can just call this v1. Very simple. Okay, now we're going to build the image. So for us to build a Docker image, of course, you know the command. So we have to do docker build then we have to get our image name and our tag. We have get tag, then the full stop. Okay, so our image is building. So our image is building. So the next we're going to tag it. The command to tag our image is right here. So we can tag the image and then push the image. So I can just copy, the command to tag the image. Yes, since we already have the variables, and then I can push the image right here. So I'll just push the image when we are done. Okay, so we have like the tag, and then we have the size showing. So now that we have our image built, we want to make sure that we deploy this image with Azure App Service, specifically web app for containers. So for us to do that, we need to create the web app. So do not forget, we always need to go back to our diagram. We've been able to do this. We've created, the image, right? So now we want to make sure that we can deploy the Docker image, with our Azure App Service. So we need to come to the left side. So we can basically look for the App Service plans. Okay, so I just have it here because I've used it before. And I can create an App Service plan. So I can just create one, the same resource group. And I can call this, let's see, Lab 8, App Service Plan, Linux. So this is it. Yes, I can use a very simple one. I can use the free tier, and we're okay with that. Yeah, so we're good. So we have our app service plan. We can create this. Okay, then now that we have our app service plan, then we can now go ahead to create like the web app. So we can do that from the app service resource. So we can create the web app. So make sure we use the same resource group, and then we can have, our web app name to be Lab 8 web app. Okay, and then of course, from the container, and it's going to be Linux. So yes, okay, of course, yeah. So we already created our Linux plan. So we have that here, and we don't need the database. So we can come to the container and then image source. We have, we're going to be using Azure Container Registry because we already built the image and pushed it to ACR. So now we have, okay, so we can already have an identity which you created previously, or you can create a new identity, right? So you can create a new identity, it doesn't really matter, but I already had this, on here. So yes, so we have our, like we checked, we have our image name, which is lab 8 node app, and then we have our tag to be v1, right? So our port has to be 8080 basically to match the Dockerfile, and that's pretty much it. Everything should be very okay. So we can review, and then we can create. All right, so this may take just a few seconds, shouldn't take so much time. So just to go back to our documentation, which I suggest you should go through, right? So yeah, so you can see that our port is 8080. So just to match it, we created, we made sure that our port here is 8080. So in case, make sure that it aligns with the port on or in your Docker file. Okay, so we can go to the resources, And yes, so now we can browse and then just wait for a few minutes, a few seconds, and we should be able to see, deployed site or website which you created. Okay, so we have this. Okay, so we have it, Lab 8 Azure Container Registry plus App Service, right? Web app for containers, which we have here. So whatever the case may be, you would see your application, or you should be able to gain access to your application, right? And of course, when we are done, we have to make sure that we delete the resources. For us to be able to do that easily, we can come to our resource group. That's the essence of creating a resource group, so it's easy for us to delete all resources that have been created for this lab. So I apply and delete, and we can delete all the resources. So that's it for our lab 8, where we had to deploy Azure Container Registry image with Azure App Service for containers. And basically, like I've said, this is the Azure equivalent of Elastic Beanstalk with ECR, for those of us very familiar with AWS. So today we basically learn how to build a Docker image on an Azure virtual machine, and we're able to push it to ACR, which is our Azure Container Registry. We're able to deploy it, using App Service, specifically web app for containers. And then right now we're cleaning up everything once we're done. If this video helped you understand container deployment in Azure, make sure to hit the like button. Do not forget to subscribe and share it with a friend who you think is also learning cloud. We're going to see in the next lab. Until then, remember, I'm Martins Jonathan, and this has been lab 8 of our Azure Lab series. So please keep on building, keep shipping, and I'm going to see you in the next lab. Thank you.